You know how teachers often lack the time or the expertise to really get to know a new e-learning tool or system and work with it effectively, right? There's always so much to do as a teacher. You've got tests to prepare, you need to grade them, there are emails to answer, you need to discuss things with colleagues, lessons to prepare, let alone do the actual teaching. Well, I help teachers work comfortably and effectively with IT, both inside and outside of the classroom. And then my aim is to try to maximize teacher and learning efficiency. And today I am going to show you how to start building and implementing a dynamic curriculum which will motivate your students and which will allow them to work independently more effectively while also freeing up lots of your time. And that's the best thing, hopefully. I'm going to show you the 4 key elements that are needed for the construction of a dynamic curriculum, an innovative dynamic curriculum. And I'm going to share experiences from our school, or my school, the Veluws College Walterbosch in Apeldoorn, the Netherlands. Did you know that most educational institutions have difficulty with implementing long-lasting and well-working dynamic curricula? In fact, research suggests that the LMS in most educational institutions is used more for administrative purposes rather than to support the actual teaching. And the question is, of course, what we can do about this and how we can change this. Before I tell you and start with these 4 key elements, I'd like to tell you a bit about my own school in Apeldoorn, the Netherlands. I think that we have around about 1,500 students, and the level is probably comparable to that of the Waldorfer Gymnasium. We cater to the highest level of students. We call that level VWO, which you can translate roughly into pre-university education. And then the new stream of education that we've developed over the past year and a half or 2 years is called VWO Erasmus. And this is really an accelerated and enriched stream. So where normally secondary school would take 6 years, the student can now choose to do it in his tempo. So that means that eventually students will be able to do it maybe even in 1 or 2 years. However, our focus is to go for the enriched part of the curriculum. So we'd like students to just be safe and comfortable in schools and allow them to develop in their own ways. This year is actually the first academic year that we're running the program, but we're going to go fully dynamic and fully digital. So that's what I'm going to show you a lot about. VWO Erasmus. For the highest students, so the students with the highest level, actually with IQs above 130 even. There are a few more selection requirements, but so these are for the smartest, eager students. We have integrated subjects, and because of that we usually work with project-based projects and modules. The basic curriculum has been condensed, and likewise, we've made lots of room for an enriched curriculum, which takes about 25% of all learning time. Students can work at their own pace, and they can take individual choices, and they are coached a lot. So you may wonder what the consequences then are for instance, the actual curriculum, for the learning management system, for the content in our itslearning pages. And what design principles did we use to fully go dynamic? Talking about the 4 key elements, we asked ourselves a number of questions with regard to all of these items. And we found these to be extremely useful. So if you're going to go fully dynamic, I know that you've already gone quite a lot at the Waldorfer with offering choice, independent learning, right? But your wish is to go to offer the choices digitally. For the e-content part, what expectations do you have? How do you expect your students and teachers to work with the platform? It's quite essential. And what type of e-degree do you need? And for me, this is really a degree. There's no such thing as a fully paper curriculum and no such thing as an e-curriculum. It's always a matter of degree, because there isn't a single curriculum today anymore which doesn't have video, for instance. So how far do you want to go? And that really is a decision that has to be taken at some point. With regard to the skills that staff need in order to do this properly, what kind of skills do you need? Who needs them? How many need this type of knowledge? And what kind of knowledge? And what type of training do we need in order to be able to do this? Do we even want to do this? Is there a will in the organization to do this? And if not, how can we culture the will? And finally, I believe that if you really want to do this properly, there has to be an need. It's just like needing water. There's not an option not to drink water, right? So again, I believe that the same thing goes for a dynamic curriculum. If there is an E need, then it will automatically follow. And finally, E resources. How much time can be invested? How much time can be allocated to teachers to develop the content that's necessary to put into an itslearning page, for instance, or any LMS? How much money is offered by management? But also which platform, for instance, are you going to use? And in our case, we've been using itslearning for quite some time already, and there was a basic knowledge base already. So this choice for us was sort of logical. And the second thing is we'd already been given permission to develop this enriched part of the curriculum and to go beyond the normal of what education is. For us, that resource was already opened up. So let me show you quickly what we've done in the past 1.5 years to get the whole process to start going. We started out with researching the concept of Erasmus. And this gives you a bit of a more detailed overview of what we did. So we wanted coached, independent work at the learner's chosen pace. All materials would have to be able to be done teacher independently, but also any teacher would have to be able to teach any module. We wanted to include a smaller workload because the workloads in secondary education in Holland have been rising and rising and rising with each test that was added to the curriculum. And that's also why we wanted to integrate subjects. The world is not boxed in certain subjects. So we wanted to go back to that worldly principle where things logically go together. We offered a basic and an enriched curriculum. We didn't use 4 periods in one academic year, but we wanted to go for 7 5-week modules, and these had to be non-linear. Of course, there was a separation mark somewhere in the year, but for instance, the first 3 modules, they can be taken any time. So there's non-linearity present. And then there were a few no-goes, and that was homework, teaching, and free periods. Interesting? No teaching? Of course there is teaching, but not in the traditional sense that students sit down and receive information for a full period. So after the concept had been developed, we'd spent about half a year on that. 2 coordinators and 6 assigned work groups were devised, and these consisted of around about 35 people. And we started out with 4 basic groups. Man und Society. Man and Society, for instance, consists of the subjects geography, history, but also philosophy and religion. Arts and culture, performance arts, visual arts, arts and media, music, all of it is present in there. Man and nature, you can imagine chemistry, biology, physics, of course. So these were mixed together. And then finally, all the languages were put together in a group. So Dutch, English, German, and French for us. And these were given the assignment to look at the core curriculum standards that were present. And they were told to select the ones that were proper and that they wanted to include in their new subjects. And we also quickly found out that there was a disproportionate amount of a singular skill present in our school. And that was the presentation. On the other hand of the spectrum, we also found that students were lacking with certain regard, for instance, in planning skills or other executive skills, and these were not paid attention to at all. So that's why we decided to take these out of the subjects, and we developed an entire new program around skills, which could then be integrated into these 4 subjects. So that was the 5th group. The sixth group was about the enriched part of the curriculum, Capita Selecta. Imagine the 7 modules in 1 year. 3 modules, students could just choose what they want to do freely. If they have a good idea, they can work that out together with a coach. They will set goals and work for 5 weeks on that project. So imagine a student wanting to create a game. He's already done that. He's created quite a nice game already. We know that he's also good at French. We ask him to put a bit of French in the game. A history teacher sees that he's included a World War I item. He asks him, could you put that theme into your game more elaborately? And likewise, you coach a student to go beyond. That's the idea of Capita Selecta. They looked for a new condensed set of core curriculum standards and translated these into learner language. We translated these into can-do statements, so I can explain what World War I is. My role at the time, I'd been part of the conceptual development, but I wasn't part of the 6 assigned work groups at the time because I was participating in an IT lab. And it was a state-funded IT lab in which we looked at ways to make education available at a distance for students who are also top athletes. And you may know these students, they're often away because they need to go to sports events. And how are they capable of still following the normal curriculum? So that was the research question for that IT lab. And I was given about 100 hours to go beyond with whatever I wanted to do for my subject in English. And I used that to fully experiment with its learning, gaining a huge knowledge base of what would be possible. So the next phase would be the content authoring phase. And as it started, we found out that, well, up to now, teachers had actually been saying, oh no, we're going to do everything on paper. It's much too complicated to do everything digitally. We want it to be simple and plain for teachers and for students, so we're not going to do this digitally. But as they started authoring new content, they realized that there had to be some kind of central idea that would get all of these different things and made them into a coherent single thing. And that's when the idea of the digital option and the dynamic digital option became present. We got the idea of an e-conversion in which a group of people would take the content that had been authored by in phase 3 and it would be converted according to an e-concept into actual course pages in its learning. So you may wonder then, how did these 2 coordinators get the idea of going digital? Well, I had weekly meetings with them somewhere during the content authoring phase. And in the first meeting, I tried to explain the whole lot of ideas that I had, but it didn't work. So in the next meeting, I restarted and I thought, right, what do I want to show them? I'm going to show them one thing, a basic page setup. Very simple, and they loved it. The next week, I showed them how coaches could monitor one student across multiple pages using the period function. They loved it. It became an iterative process, and each week I would introduce something new, and they would like it because it was a simple idea. So we went on to core curriculum standards, learning objectives in its learning, rubrics, and then the planner as the central entrance to education. And likewise, we developed an E-concept. For the E-conversion, it was decided that I would be the single teacher converting the entire program for all subjects, assisted by 2 students who just graduated. And we would get 200 hours each. I would get 200 and they would get 200. As the deadline for the content authoring approached, because the e-conversion had to start, suddenly there was an awareness that we need to do this properly. We need to have some kind of tool to offer our content in a coherent form. People wanted a fast and a qualitative e-conversion. They didn't have time for it. It was May already. The academic year was about to start. So, likewise, I was given a mandate and the e-will had just come into existence. Staff had e-need suddenly. So talking about the 4 key elements, I've already discussed how we invested resources. We had 6 work groups, 2 coordinators, and 1 teacher who was sent away to learn all the critical skills needed in the e-conversion. Regarding the e-will, the whole process, the concept of Erasmus, that led to an automatic path. And then finally, for e-skills, we only had to have a very small pool of skilled people in order to do this. Of course, if you're going to do this in the long term, it's impossible to just keep it with one person, but I'll explain why we did it like this later. So you may wonder about the content now. What is this e-concept? I used roughly 6 design principles to form a dynamic curriculum. Before I tell you about that, let me tell you about the success of the course book. Do you still have those? Or have you gone digital with course books already? Okay, then you know what they look like. But let me tell you why they're so successful. They're fully self-contained. So everything you need is in that one book. You put it on your table, you're a smart teacher, you know what you can do, you look into it and you already know what the student has to learn, right? What he has to do in order to achieve the learning goal. Everything is there, assignment, instruction, it's very handy and it's very small and self-contained. It has a very clear layout system. It shows you already, by not reading anything at all, what the introduction is, what sections there are, what an assignment is, etc. So basically from looking at the content you already know what is what. Very handy. It has a clear table of contents, so you can look things up. You know this chapter is going to have 5 paragraphs. And I know what these are about already as well, because it sort of told me already, the table of contents. Very handy. There's a glossary, so if I don't remember that math term, for instance, linear algebra, and I want to look that up, I can go into the glossary and just look it up, and it tells me where to look in the book. Very handy. You don't need anything else. And then finally, the numbering. And this is really silly, but if you look at the average itslearning page in our school, this has sort of disappeared. But numbering is omnipresent in course books. Chapters are numbered, paragraphs are numbered, activities are numbered, word lists are sometimes numbered. Everything is numbered. Why? Because it tells you where something starts and where something ends. It's very practical, it's handy. So that's the success of the course book. But when we go digital, unfortunately, that's all gone. At least, it was all gone in our school. So I got this site from our rubbish bin in itslearning. So you can see there is some kind of structure, but then for instance for grammar, there's a whole lot there. There's no numbering. You can't just click on something. It gives you a download instead of opening it directly. Do I know what to finish when and where? Can I see that right now? No, I can't. So as a student, this is a jumble of files, and I am completely in the dark as to what I need to do where and when. It's very impractical, yet it was a huge folder, actually, of files. And it was all right, because they had a planner which had some text in it and told you to go to which file. But it required a lot of thinking on the part of the student. So let's go to the 6 concepts. And the first concept is that the planner is central. So the planner has a clear introduction, and then you go on to the actual plans. There are pages in it, there's a numbering system in it, etc. So it's very handy because everything you need is contained in that planner. It tells you how many elements are there. You can see from the start that a number of plans and it's going to end in a certain way, etc. Very practical. So lots of these coursebook elements are present in the planner. The planner is central. I also added descriptions with names here. So plantaardige cel means cell of a plant. So this is sort of a glossary which helps you to find certain elements. The second major concept is no downloads. Again, no downloads. Downloads are the death of courses, digital, dynamic, e-curricula, etc., whatever you want to call it. Downloads, they're slow. You need to wait for them. Then they're somewhere in a folder on your computer. There's usually a huge amount of files there. And imagine being a student and having multiple subjects, all with downloads, working in all of those files. I have to save this somewhere. I'm just going to put it in the download folder and I'll find it somewhere later on. It doesn't work like that. In my school, teachers rarely use the assignment function. So students had to just think of where they wanted to save their work. So why not use the assignment function, right? Why not make it a coherent whole? And downloads are not the way to go. They create singular extra units. Imagine taking a book and taking out 5 pages, because that's literally what a download is. Then you work with the pages, and then once you're done, where do you put them? Again, here I show you that all of the sources on the right, they're all either pages or tasks or assignments, and you don't have to download a single thing. The only thing you have to download once is a template, which you immediately upload afterwards. So number 3, it's media integration and flipping the classroom. If we want to go beyond the basic functionality of a course book, we want to go beyond text and beyond pictures. So at least we want to add some kind of video, but why not include video instructions directly in assignments? So here you see one of these pages I developed for that IT lab last year. So it's for English. And you see that the instruction is directly included in the assignment. So what you can basically say is, right, here you have, the assignment is to watch the video, take notes while watching, and discuss it afterwards with a peer. Instead of teachers just students sitting like this in the classroom, and a teacher trying to cater all of these students. But that's boring for the one who's already got it. And it's incredibly annoying for the one who still didn't get it. And this allows a student to replay. So it's more of it's good functionality. So flipping the classroom and videos. But we can go beyond that, of course. You can integrate entire websites. Why not? For instance, this website is interesting. It's a famous Dutch website which includes lots of video. But you can't literally put the video or just the video in a website. It doesn't allow you to do that, the embedding. So I just embedded the entire website in the assignment itself. So the assignment is also embedded, of course, into the planner. I also embedded things like tests as assignments. So this is an assignment you may all recognize from earlier on. Or do we have any biology teachers here? Probably. And why is this handy? It's not an actual test. It's not about that. It's about having one-word answers, and you have a function in itslearning that makes this better than the regular course book. The student gets feedback immediately. And what we've noticed is that students actually go back to the same assignment and redo it in order to get full marks. And isn't that what we want? We want them to know these terms, right? So that's good. So media integration. The next one is the one-click away principle. And basically this is the principle that when a student has to click too many times, he'll just quit. If it's too difficult to get to the content or to what you need to do, he'll stop and he'll ask, oh, I don't know what's happening. You don't want to have too many clicks. So let me show you an example of Dutch, which uses a digital course book. This is a homework task. So they didn't put all of the assignments, etc., in the planner itself, but they used homework tasks. And these include links to the digital method. So it's just a click away. You click on the digital course book, you already see what you've done, or what you have to do, and you go and work on the assignment. It's practical. Obviously, it's not always possible to just have that one click, but it's always better to have fewer. Number 5, core curriculum standards and rubrics. These should be visible across pages and activities. A student has the right to know what he or she is learning. Because it's nice going on a trip to the top of a mountain, but what am I doing here? And is there something in particular I need to do? It's handy if you know what the goal is. You don't always have to know it, but why not show them like this? So you have core curriculum standards in the planner, and you can even put them in assignments, etc. And using those core curriculum standards, you can also add rubrics. So here you see a student who's done an assignment. I click on the assignment, and it's just a matter of opening the rubric and selecting the proper descriptors. A grade is automatically calculated. It's heavenly for teachers. I did this last year while checking 30 essays, which would regularly or normally take me about 3 hours. It now took only 2. Just because you didn't, I'm a quick typer, so I didn't have to write. So this is very practical. It saves a lot of time. And also the student sees in advance what behavior he is aiming for, which is fair, right? I've handed in an essay. I can see beforehand in what category my essay is going to fall. And afterwards, you can actually see that when the grade's been given. So number 6, that's tracing student activity. That's really something we wanted to add, as there is so much individual work in VWO Erasmus. So how do you keep track of what your students are doing? Well, because we have a coherent whole of pages, and because these students are continuously working on these pages, we can use things like 360 degrees resources. So we can just see what students have been doing, how much time they've spent on certain activities. This is a new development, of course, in itslearning. It was only released, I think, just before the summer holiday. But coaches are already using this. They love it. It's very clear to see differences between students, the one reading a page for 3 seconds and the other one taking 5 minutes, and then asking, hey, how come you took 1 second to read this page? But of course, there's also the possibility to see what students have done over courses using the period function. I already mentioned it earlier. So if you set up periods in itslearning, it's a function that needs to be turned on by your admins, but you can get this overview per period of the active subjects, and you can see what has been finished and what hasn't been finished. And if something hasn't been finished sufficiently, the coach can actually tell the student to go back to that teacher and re-hand in something. So this is extremely valuable information for a coach. He or she doesn't have to go to 12 pages. There is one overview per period. So let me shortly recap this. The education process starts from the planner and is a seamless whole of pages that are fully integrated. Students do not have to be bothered with downloads, but media such as video instruction, assignments, and websites have been seamlessly integrated as one, allowing for individual work at an unprecedented level. Students do not have to bother with lots of clicks, and they can see what learning objectives need to be reached and how these are going to be graded through the rubrics. And finally, teachers have the ultimate tool to see how their students are progressing. So let me be honest again. This is just a selection of principles. We used a lot more. We had digital tests in it, etc. You may wonder what the student opinions are so far. And obviously, since we've only just started, I can't tell you a lot about these youngsters working with all these new pages. But I can tell you about our experiences from last year. And I was interviewed by a magazine. And this magazine also asked for a few student names so they could be interviewed, and I translated that into English for you. So I really enjoyed the new setup. By working independently, I received more of a challenge for English, and it allowed me to spend more time on things that still needed work, such as writing skills. Moreover, I really enjoyed feedback on assignments. This causes you to learn a lot yourself. The only minus was that, for me, it was sometimes unclear what to hand in when. And that was because there was lots of optionals in it. So for him, that led to, I don't know what to do. Nicholas, he says, I thought it was heavenly to be able to work at my own pace because of itslearning. The added advantage was that you didn't need to carry or bring any books anymore. Whenever I had a question, I sent a message and I quickly received an answer each time, allowing me to move ahead with the assignment. I would have loved to have worked this way in other subjects. So hopefully that sort of gives an impression. So going back to the 4 elements, we've sort of discussed it all. Now we've discussed our e-concept and e-conversion. But what you may wonder is how this e-conversion was designed like this. So were teachers okay with it, that a single person converted all their materials into their courses? And the secret is, because of the lack of time that we had, so between May and the 1st of July, it had to be finished. We didn't have time to collaborate intensively with teachers continuously. And because of that, I had to make split-second decisions. So if something was unclear, I rewrote it. If something was planned, there were no pictures in it, I added pictures. There was a whole module about audio, what was it? Hörspiele. So there wasn't a single one present in the entire module, so I added 4. These were on YouTube, so it was just a few Googles and then I had it. So, and it wasn't about me at all. It was about having an editor-in-chief that could make decisions about uniformity and about accessibility for students. And about all of these concepts that we designed at the beginning. And teachers allowed it because of the deadlines that were approaching. They wanted this to be done properly. They wanted to be helped with this. So that was very interesting. Also, our staff lacked the necessary skills to implement the design principles properly. And there was simply no time or budget to train them all. And why did we choose this way? Well, or at least I believe, in the leading by example format. For instance, there's a story of Native Americans who first lay their eyes upon a sailing ship that gets in reach of the coast, and they don't see it, because the concept of a boat like that, it doesn't exist in their minds. You first need to know what you want in order to be able to learn how to do that. And that's why I think leading by example is essential. So in conclusion, I believe, before that, what did I see in the past few months? In the past few months, I've received more questions about how to do this. How do I change this spelling mistake in that rubric? How do I add a criterion? How do I change the order of these subjects in the planner? How do I set up the period function? Stuff like that. I've never received as many questions as I have in the last few months. Also, looking at the regular pages used in the first year, teachers have started picking up. Teachers not teaching in Erasmus, they've started picking up. They're copying the elements that are present in these courses. So again, that's leading by example. So I believe that these teachers will acquire the skills they need to create these pages in time. And just by having observed the full potential, they'll be able to do it because they know what they want. Will it cost time? Yes. But if you know what you want, you can get what you want. Thank you for your attention.